Hi, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Even. It's time for our second poetry lesson. This lesson, we're going to talk about rhyming words, and we're also going to talk about the author's point of view. The success criteria is I can write a poem that uses rhyming words, and I can identify who is talking in the poem. The first poem we're going to look at is My Brother's Bug by Jack Prelutsky. As I'm reading this poem, I want you to think about who is telling the story and what words in this poem help us figure out who is talking. The second thing you're going to look for are rhyming words, and where are those rhyming words located? Here we go. My Brother's Bug by Jack Prelutsky. My brother's bug was green and plump. It did not run, it could not jump. It had no fur for it to shed. It slept all night beneath his bed. My brother's bug had dainty feet. It did not need a lot to eat. It did not need a lot to drink. It did not scream. It did not stink. It always tried to be polite. It did not scratch. It did not bite. The only time it soiled the rug was when I squashed my brother's bug. Who do you think is telling this story? And what words in this story give us a clue to who's talking? As I look back in the story, I notice the words, my brother, my brother. So that's telling me that the sibling of this kid is who's telling the story, because he keeps saying my brother. Now, do we know if the sibling is a boy or a girl? Not necessarily, but I can infer that it's a boy because I know that boys love bugs. And so that tells me that it's probably a boy. But I don't know that for sure because I'm sure there's some girls out there that like bugs. The second thing we're going to look at in the story is the rhyming words and where they are located. Remember last time we talked about stanzas and we talked about lines. This story has 4 stanzas in it. And a stanza is a group of sentences that fit together. Kind of reminds me of a paragraph in a story. So we see that there are 3 stanzas in this story. How many sentences do you see? How many sentences are in each stanza? I count 1, 2, 3, 4 in the first one, 4 in the second one, and 4 in the third one. So how many stanzas is that? If you said 12, you are lines. Ooh, Mrs. Even just messed up. It's not stanzas. I asked how many sentences are there, and there are 12 sentences. But there are 1, 2, 3 stanzas. So do you see the difference between a stanza and a sentence? That's kind of important, especially if you have to go back into the stories and try to figure out where certain things happen. So somebody could tell you to look at the third stanza in the second row or second sentence, and that would be a lot easier than somebody saying it's the 86th sentence. That would be a lot of counting, wouldn't it? All right. The second part that I wanted to look on with this is the rhyming words. So, my brother's bug was green and plump. It did not run, it could not jump. So there are my 2 rhyming words. It had no fur for it to shed. It slept all night beneath the bed. And where are we finding the rhyming words at? If you're thinking the end of each sentence, you are correct. Let's see if that still works. My brother's bug had dainty feet. He did not need a lot to eat. Do those 2 words rhyme? It did not need a lot to drink. It did not scream. It did not stink. It always tries to be polite. It did not scratch. It did not bite. The only time it soiled the rug was when I squashed my brother's bug. So you notice with this poem, the author decided to put the rhyming words at the end of each sentence. Now let's look at another poem. The second one is called Captain Hook. Remember, we're looking for rhyming words and we're trying to figure out if it is written from a point of view or if it's just written from a narrator telling a story. It's Captain Hook. Captain Hook must remember not to scratch his toes. Captain Hook must watch out and never pick his nose. Captain Hook must be gentle when he shakes your hand. Captain Hook must be careful opening sardine cans and playing tag and pouring tea and turning pages of his book. Lots of folks I'm glad I ain't, but mostly Captain Hook. What do you think? Is this poem telling a story, or do you think it's from somebody's point of view? If you said telling a story, you are correct. This is from a narrator's point of view. And this author is a little bit different. He has his rhyming words going every other line, which is another way that a poem is quite frequently written. So we have toes and nose, hand and cans, book and hook. All right, so that leads us to the last poem. And this poem I'm just going to read to you because when we're done here, you're going to open up the other Google's document, which is called Google Forms, and I have a little quiz for you about this poem. This poem is called Smart. My dad gave me $1 bill because I'm his smartest son. I swapped it for 2 shiny quarters because 2 is more than 1. And then I took the quarters and traded them to Lou for 3 dimes. I guess he didn't know that 3 is more than 2. Just then along came old blind Bates, and just 'cause he can't see, he gave me 4 nickels for my 3 dimes. And 4 is more than 3. And I took the nickels to Hiram Combs down at the seed feed store, and the fool gave me 5 pennies for them. And 5 is more than 4. And then I went and showed my dad, and he got red in the cheeks and closed his eyes and shook his head, too proud of me to speak. Okay, I want you to think about that poem called Smart. You're going to go into the classroom and click on the link for Google Forms. And in there, you'll see the poem, and then there are several questions that you need to answer. I hope you enjoy it, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Bye.